Hi, I'm Dr. Abby Hamilton, and I'm a Filipino-American IO psychologist and two-time TEDx speaker, and I talk about culture and speaking up to be happy, free, and everything we're meant to be.
All right, hi everybody, it's Dr. Abby, and I'm here with Adriel Mercado.
Hi, how's it going? Hey, how you doing?
Okay, so we met on LinkedIn, and the thing is, on LinkedIn you get to see how successful people are, and before you even would know in person. Maybe if we had known each other for years, wouldn't know all the things that are on your LinkedIn profile.
Right,
So
that's true.
that's why I'm so excited to be meeting with you now.
Awesome.
So tell us, Adriel, what do you do? We're here in Tampa, so what do you do here in Tampa?
So currently I am a lighting solutions manager for a company called Train Technologies. Most of you probably know it as like the big air conditioning company, but there's also a division that does energy services type of work. So I help support all of the big lighting projects that are throughout the country within Train. Yeah.
Lighting.
Yeah.
So when you say lighting, that can mean lots of things, like putting up spotlights that are on celebrities, or is it the street lights? What do you mean by
That's
lighting?
a good question, because so a lot of folks just see lighting as just things that help, like illuminate the areas that are inside of a building, and that's pretty much what we're doing. Is so there's a lot of buildings out there throughout the country that have like not energy efficient lights, and they actually are energy hogs for buildings, and it's part of this whole energy movement to reduce that throughout the country for all buildings. And that's what we support, is being able to reduce that from not only the lighting perspective, but from a full building energy perspective. So so it includes lights like street lights and exterior lights, anything that's basically on a meter, a utility meter that supports the charging of electricity for a building.
Wow, because that drains. The lighting is a major drain on energy,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the question that I have is, how did you come from little Adriel, to this? This is pretty fancy stuff you're doing. So,
Yeah.
You go from this little thing, and then, how did you go through? Did you have the whole pressure of, what do you mean you're not going to be in healthcare,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
So as with, I'm Filipino-American, right? So as with many in the culture have experienced, you'll notice, and you'll probably hear if you have Filipino friends, that when you grow up, you are, like any kid, right? You don't know really what you're going to do, and you get pushed by your parents to be either a doctor, a nurse, engineer, or something of that sort, which is a professional kind of like luxury, if you will, to all of the Filipino parents who have come here first generation to help support their kids. So for myself, I was pushed to be a engineer, and also either an engineer or a doctor. And my mom was a nurse, dad is an engineer.
Okay.
My dad worked for the Department of Transportation, and he was the Florida Department of Transportation, and he retired from there. He was one of those stories where he came from the Philippines, and he just basically jumped ship, came over here, joined the Navy, and learned a trade, electricity. And with that electrical degree-ish, if you want to call it that, from the Philippines, transferred it over to here, his knowledge from that, and then became a electrical engineer and worked for that Department of Transportation until he retired. My mom was a nurse, came here with like the influx of nurses that came in the 70s, and basically lived in a house in Miami with kind of like a nanay, right? It's to help like push them through and get them introduced to the culture here as a nurse, and literally just worked her way up and ended up retiring from there as well. So as a kid, I grew up learning to really to hone in on my math skills and my skills that would help me kind of grow into becoming just one of the smart kids, work hard, and really kind of put your head down, don't make any waves, and really just do what you can to be successful, but let them know that you're successful from a education standpoint, right? In terms of like what I got pushed into, engineering, right? So engineering was because my dad was an engineer.
Yes.
And I went through, when I was in college, like any other kid, like you don't really know what you're doing. I just started with engineering. I literally bounced around from computer to civil to electrical, and then I ended up settling in with electrical and computer engineering as a combination. So
Wow, good
kind of like
for
a dual
you.
degree from
Yeah.
University of Florida. So I graduated from there at University of Florida with that degree, and then I started just in the workforce. Yeah.
Okay, let's just go
Sorry,
back to that
a lot to unpack.
moment when you were in college.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? And then I'm gonna change my major. Oh no, that whole feeling of
Yeah.
I will be disapproved of, and can
Right.
I face myself in the morning when I do this? How do I tell? Did you tell your parents when you were changing, or did you just kind of like do it on
So
your own?
this is interesting, this conversation, because I don't really talk about this too much, because my dad, he at the Department of Transportation, yes, he has an electrical background, but he ended up becoming a transportation engineer, which is a sect of civil engineering.
Oh,
So
okay.
civil engineering, he basically did traffic light type stuff, did roadway signs, and he wanted to push me. He's even brought me to his workplace many times when I was a kid, just to see what it would be like. And it was very interesting to me, just being able to go into that corporate atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like I would see him. He was a government employee, right, with the Department of Transportation. So he would go in at 8 o'clock and be home at 5:30. Just because 8 to 5, right, every day for 40 something years, right?
Wow.
So he was that kind of person. Well, when I was in college, he learned that I was changing. So my initial major was civil engineering.
Okay.
And with civil engineering, I was going through it and I was like, I don't know if I like this. It was kind of boring. I could do it. But then I just told him I was doing computers, and he's like, oh, computers are the future. Well, that's good. You can go do computers. So he was actually supportive.
So that's not normal.
Not normal. Not normal.
Yeah.
And the reason why, I think, is because his background is electrical, right? And he did that on the submarine. He worked on the electrical systems of a submarine in the Navy. And he was very interested in just like all things like fixing and putting together and engineering. So
Okay.
he still saw computers as the future, which I thought was a good thing. But here's where it got interesting, is because I ended up changing again. And this is where I changed to electrical engineering. But the funny thing enough, and I will say, like, my dad up to this point in high school, he was very like hard pressed on having me do something that's going to be successful, and it doesn't matter what it was, and it's going to be engineering or a doctor, right? but when I keep changing like this, obviously that puts a lot of pressure on you in terms of like, well, do you really know what you're doing, or do you really want to do this? I don't know if I agree with it. But then when I said I was doing electrical engineering, his eyes kind of lit up, because it's always something he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, with that background, and then I already doing enough on the computer side, that doing a combined degree, I finally kind of found my focus. A lot of this had to do with some personal extracurricular stuff too that was going on in college. Like, in college, and I don't know if you in college, like I was part of like a social clubs, right?
Did you do
Filipino Student Association.
Oh yeah.
Yes, so
that's where all
that's-
dreams come true.
It does, it does. Right, so I learned. That's where I actually learned a lot about the Filipinos in general, right? Like, because
Yeah.
everybody there was basically second generation. Everybody there was going through the same thing that I was going through, and I felt more comfortable talking with my parents because I could have these relationships with folks who were going through the same exact thing.
Yes.
Right, and I did the leadership thing there. I was the cultural chair. I was the sergeant at arms. I ended up becoming the
Okay.
VP and the president there. So that was a great time to.
And that is, let me just
Sure, yeah.
sidetrack. That is where a lot of your skills come together that you bring into the workplace.
Absolutely.
I know that when I was in college, I was a lot of the officer positions in my organizations, and then I took them into the workplace, and I found that I was different than the average person.
Yeah.
Because I had, and the thing is, when we're in college, we don't realize that we're building our skills for our future career. We just think that, hey, I'm going to be a leader,
Yeah.
I want to be the cool one, I want to be in charge. We're kind of like power hungry a little. And then we don't realize that all the reports and things that we have to do and organize, it goes into the workplace. So
Yeah, absolutely,
I love
yeah.
that. Okay, so I love your experience too, growing in the Filipino community. That is so common. It is. I've done many interviews, and I see it as a common thread. So if you're in high school about to go into college, if you're in college right now, don't disregard those things. These opportunities are where you will grow, and you'll be really more open to learning about yourself and relieved in some way. You were just saying that you felt like, these people are experiencing what I'm experiencing. So
Mhm.
I love that. Okay, so then after you graduated, took your first job. What was your first
I
job?
did. So my first job was basically, it's called a graduate engineer. I did the recruiting thing through college, and I found the right engineering spot. And this, of course, was when my dad was most proud, and my parents were most proud, because
of
you got
course.
your first job, right? Like I was. The only disappointing thing to them was that I wasn't moving back to Fort Lauderdale. So I went to
Oh,
University of
yeah.
Florida, which is in Gainesville, and I made my way here to Tampa. So I came straight to Tampa,
Oh.
and it was really a selfish reason. It was more I wanted to be with my friends still. So I had two Filipino friends that became my. They were college roomies, and they became our basically we moved together here in Tampa. We rented a house in Temple Terrace,
Oh, okay.
and we continued the somewhat half party lifestyle.
Yeah,
But at the
after
same time, we were still all working, right? So we
Yeah.
were all doing different things. Like my good buddy, he was a physical therapist. Another one, he was a recruiter. So so we were all
Okay.
kind of like, we had our jobs, and we were all very excited to move our careers forward together. And my parents were very excited about that, being very excited about the way that I was able to grab a position
Yeah.
as an engineer.
Was that position in the company you're in now?
No, it's not. So it was
Oh.
the first company I was with was a company. It's an engineering company here. It was based out of Orlando, but it had a division that was growing here in Tampa, and I was one of the first engineers electrical engineers to start with the company. And I learned doing things like CAD, like computer-aided design, and doing design work for buildings, putting up circuitry and stuff like that within a drawing set, and then that would go to a submittal for a building construction and doing all of those types of things. So it was a really good experience. I was there for 8.5 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it
you
was
learned it all.
a good first stint right there, and it was one of those, I was very well prepared in doing the interview and everything, like any Filipino kid would be, right? It's like my dad would give me all these pointers on what to say and how to say it. Like he basically had me some good pointers, right? Like memorize the website and memorize the things that
Yes.
they're into, and
Yeah.
like talk their language, and it's all these things that he's learned. Obviously he was working for the government for 20 plus years, so he would understand that. The famous words for him was like, always read and memorize the specifications, and it's like,
You're not going to do it with a Filipino accent?
I know. I was like, do the specifications. It's like,
There you go.
yeah. And it's like the words weren't always matching up, but he would say it so powerfully that it was there. And it was like, I got it right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. We love our parents'
We do.
words of wisdom that come out in kind of wrong English, but they're so perfect.
We understand, because like it's like they're doing the translation thing, but they've made it enough to where they can get the point across, right?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so so then now you're at this company, and what's your title there?
So it's lighting solutions manager, lighting solutions and strategy manager. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not really that fancy, but
Well, yeah, you're the manager, so and it's a really great opportunity. It's a really great business, a great industry to be in.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
so here's something that I want to break apart real quick. There are people who grew up in households where it was like children are seen and not heard. Just stay there, just eat your food and go to your room and do your homework. And then there are some that the parents are not so traditional, and they're like, tell us about your day, and oh, why don't you get involved here, or I can see you being successful there. Where do you fall in that range?
I think it was interesting. It was like somewhat of a in-between, I would say. My dad was very traditional, or still is very traditional. He's still alive, and my mom is still alive as well. And if you want to talk about personalities, my dad is like the hard-driven but detailed kind of guy, right? And my mom is very like, wants to know where the party is, wants to always be involved, is always listening to hear what the gossip is around.
Oh, chismes.
Yeah, chismes, very
Uh-huh.
chismes. So, but yeah, for me, they were driving me in this direction of, yes, you have to be kind of like put your head down at first and kind of stay steady. But they realized that my personality was a little bit more outgoing, and that I needed to kind of channel that, which, I think it was very good. I have very good parents, and it's not, I would say it's not the traditional Filipino, because the traditional Filipino is like you're talking about.
Yeah,
Dr.
cookie
Abby, is like,
cutter.
cookie cutter.
Yeah.
You do it this way, and you be quiet and just do it because I know best, right?
Because that's what they grew up with.
Right,
So
right.
When you
But it was
have
like
a
that at the
parent-
beginning. Like
Yeah.
I think it was like that at the beginning.
At the beginning. So
Yeah.
your parents were like, they're like, Mommy, we're here in the States. It's time for us to change, right? That kind of,
It's
you
almost-
imagine that's
yeah.
how your parents
Yeah.
talk to each other at some point in the bed, like, tomorrow let's talk to our children and see what they want to do, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's like the light bulb goes off, and then there's something different, right?
Well, yeah. So where the transition I think happened was where I started doing extracurricular activities in high school. In high school, when I was getting involved with, especially baseball, I was very good at
Okay.
baseball in high school, and it was one of those things that my dad used as a crutch to you don't play baseball until you do good with school. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I remember-
was surprised that you were allowed to do sports and things because usually it's like school, only school. You
Yes,
know.
yes, and that's where the transition happens. Like when I was younger, I was actually very good, and I was always the all-star, and my dad was very interested in, because I think he never got to do it, right? Like when I talked to him, it's one of these things that my dad is he's emotional when it comes to things that he wishes he would have done when he was like younger. So baseball, he was at every practice, he was at every game, and he was always there watching. That's how I know. Like it's one of those like things like when I would do something and I could look back at the stands, I know he was there. So yeah, I know. Emotionally, it's very good. And but I think that what helped kind of like springboard the rest of my life in terms of being able to do the things that I wanted to, and I thought that it was best for my decision making to go forward with. Because I think at that point he was realizing that I was making the decisions that were going to be best for myself,
Right.
and that he knew that he could kind of let go of that in a sense, and
Wow.
focus on my sister.
Wow.
Right? So
Focus on your sister.
right, my younger
That's a
sister.
different
Yeah,
story.
yeah, it is definitely a different story. But yeah, as I grew into baseball, I think a funny story that I'll talk about is like my grades were like I got B minuses and B pluses one report card, a few of them.
Oh,
And it
during
was-
the baseball time.
During baseball season, yeah. So it was a very, you know how that goes, right? So it's like you want all A's, all A's, all A's,
Yeah,
and
it's
I got
like,
these B
oh,
pluses
it's
and
because
B
of
minuses.
that's baseball.
Yeah, it's because of baseball, and it's writing to me. I mean, it was writing, and it was English, right? So it wasn't really
Okay.
that bad. You know, I was still getting A pluses in math and science, and that was fine. But he was, how do I say? He threatened me basically with not playing baseball because of those grades. You're not going to play again until you get all A's. It's like I literally went to my room and cried because
Yeah.
it's like baseball to me was my identity. Like it was
Right.
in high school. That's more your social identity than your grades.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, and that's what I felt like I needed to attach to because that's what made me more popular was that I
Yeah.
was on the baseball team. So, anyways, it's just a funny story because
so then if you
yeah.
can't get the A's
Mhm.
and you're doing all you can and still getting B's, then you're done. So what do you do?
Right. So
Not
it
like
did
you-
take. So
yeah.
here's where my mom comes in, right? And she absolutely like diffused the situation. Talked to him a little bit about just the because she's more social, right? So she understands the idea of meeting people and wanting to be close to people. It's like he's going to need these relationships in his career, and baseball is going to help him move forward with his interactive team life and everything. And he understood team because he was a team leader and he was a part of a team at the Department of Transportation. And he was eventually, I think a few weeks later, I was able to start going back to baseball practices and start going back to everything, and we mended our relationship in a sense because I think he also missed the fact that he wasn't going to the games and the practices.
I'm sure
and
he
stuff.
was equally tormented. Like
He
you
was.
will not go to baseball
He
without
was.
A's, and then went back to his.
But of
his
course.
head. Oh,
I know,
He
I
must
know.
get A's. like how am I gonna live without his baseball?
Yeah.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh, your parents seem so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, you were able to find your voice, find your passion, and
Yeah.
your parents didn't stomp on that. And then you went to college, you
Yeah.
grew more there, and look at you
did.
now, you're a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's the experience of a Filipino American, second gen, mostly, is always different because we come from these parents who live a certain way, and with your parents, they crossed over at some point. There was like a turning point.
Yeah, there was.
So this time of talking together with Adriel, number one, it opens up our minds as second gens that we're not alone. This is happening to all of us. It's such a common story. You don't even realize how common your story is, as far as, you know, the turmoil and then the final revelation. And then it's also a message to our parents that we're in the United States now, and you can still hold on to your culture and your traditions, but maybe more importantly, hold on to your children and to the love of your family, and be understanding we're in a new place, and be a student of what's happening in your life. Love and learn and grow. So it's not just what you know and keep doing it that way. It's always a time of growth and opportunity. So I'm so glad I got a chance to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Wow, cool stories.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Adriel.
Thank you
and
so
we'll
much.
see you guys next
Bye.
time.
See ya.